I'm here with my friend Christina, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like for her to grow up as an immigrant child in the United States. How long have you lived in the U.S.?
24 years.
And you are?
25 now.
Okay, so you came here when you were a year old?
Yes.
So you have no memory of living anywhere else?
No.
Okay.
No.
What family members did you reside with as you grew up?
It was my parents, my grandfather, and my uncle.
Okay, and of those people, who spoke Spanish as their first language and English as their second?
All four of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you became fluent in English?
Since I was little, I learned Spanish originally, but then as I went to pre-K, I learned English and Spanish both at the same time.
Do you remember any of the challenges of learning English back then? Do you ever, you don't remember feeling frustrated or anything? It just kind of happened easily for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Which language is predominantly spoken in your home now with your family? Well, tell me, who do you live with now?
Well, I live with my fiance and my two kids, and in our house we speak English. But in my mother's house, we predominantly speak Spanish.
Okay, so your mom still speaks Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what affected acquiring a new language having your relationship with other family members? And we kind of talked about this a little bit, like about the roles that you had in your house growing up, kind of acting as the translator for your parents. Can you tell me a little bit of what that was like?
Well, as far as I can remember, I was always the one that was pushed in front. I always was the one that ordered the pizza. If we were customer service, I was there translating, and anything they needed, even as simple as reading a letter, I was always there. So I kind of felt like they were my kids in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about, like, one of your first memories of having to kind of act as an adult almost in order to advocate for your parents?
When I was 6, we lived in a house and the attic leaked really bad, and my parents were really furious and they wanted the landlord to fix the attic. And I remember them saying, "You need to tell her that we need to get this attic fixed." And they were standing behind me, but the landlord, she was this older woman, and she was really angry, and she's like, "I can't," and it kind of became tense. But even, I think I can remember as far as when I was 6, I was in the middle of this argument explaining to her, and almost feeling the frustration that they felt.
That your parents were feeling.
Yeah,
right,
it's like I translated the frustration that, we need this attic fixed. It's like leaking. We're not going to pay you rent if you don't fix it. And then we ended up getting a whole new remodeled attic, which was cool. But it was kind of, that's when I remember
you felt responsible.
I could handle more than I should.
A typical 6-year-old would not have to argue with the landlord and advocate for their parents.
Like I used to be able to dial the phone and.
Okay. Have things changed much as now that you're older? Have your parents been able to become a little more independent? Do they speak English now?
They do. They can communicate. They can. My mom can do so much, and my dad can do so much. They still rely on me too much, and I think that's a challenge because I try to cut them off, but then I can only cut them off so much because they are my parents.
Right.
But my mom has come a long way as far as that she can communicate. She purchased her own home. My dad has gotten himself jobs and things like that on his own. Whereas when we first came, they didn't speak a lick of English. They worked jobs here in the United States.
How was it being a school-age kid? Were you able to rely on your parents at all for like homework help, or did they go to teacher conferences or things like that? Were they able to do things like that? I
remember we went to a handful of teacher conferences, and I kind of used that to my advantage sometimes when I needed to. They only understood so much, especially if it was bad, that they got that. But they didn't always really understand in full detail what was being explained. I would always be, again, the translator telling them what the teacher would say. Okay. And the teacher only knew so much, and my parents only knew so much, and I kept what I wanted to keep.
Okay. Can you think of a time that, during your school age years that you felt it was challenging, that you couldn't rely on your parents the way maybe you would have hoped to have, or feeling like you had to be more responsible than you wanted to be?
Definitely. Sometimes, even when I finished high school and the whole college aspect of it, my parents had no clue about that because back in Mexico, graduating is 8th grade. So they had no clue about financial aid. They had no clue about any of that, and I had no clue about any of that. So you kind of almost feel like, I can't do this. I don't know. I don't have anyone to... You felt like
you're on your own.
Exactly. I didn't have anyone to lean on. So, there's a lot of things that I feel that I didn't have support from them. It was more of, I just gotta work.
Did you have many friends that were in similar situations?
I had friends that were in similar situations, but not because of their parents being illegal, more of because their parents weren't as responsible. They just weren't fit parents.
Okay, so you related, so your parents were fit parents, it's just that language barrier kept them from being able to do.
They can only go so far.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right, is there anything else that you would add to, like, your experience? Do your children speak Spanish? Have you taught them Spanish?
My daughter is now, she's 5, and she's just now starting to learn Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and that's only because of the kids in her pre-kindergarten class are trying to let go of the Spanish and pick up the English, and she's
Mm-hmm.
picking that up. My son is picking up after my daughter, and I try to speak to them in Spanish. It's kind of a struggle when I have a fiance that doesn't speak any Spanish
Oh,
either.
he doesn't, okay.
So when I speak Spanish to them, I'm saying things twice.
Okay.
And then you add my mom to the mix, I'm saying things 3 times.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes it's a battle. I try, but they're picking up the basics.
Has it been to your advantage to be bilingual?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
Is there something that you could think of that it was like to your advantage that you're able to speak Spanish?
Well, one of them that I can think of really strongly is we had a tent wedding here at the Sterling, and we had guests stay here that came straight from Italy, and they had no English vocabulary whatsoever, and
This
no
is
one
Leo, by the way.
and no one wanted to approach them for dinner because they didn't know what to say to them
Right.
for the main course.
Right.
So I spoke Spanish, and luckily they kind of
You were able to
understood
communicate.
what they said, what I was saying to them. So that's the only one that I can really remember that it's like, oh, it's a good thing I know
Well, I'm
Spanish.
jealous that you're bilingual. I would love to be bilingual, but all right. Well, thank you so much for the
Sure.
interview. All right, we're good.